If you've been a Zelda fan for a while, you've probably heard about the Majora's Mask grief theory. You know, the theory that the hero of time's journey through Majora's Mask is actually the story of Link accepting his own death by journeying through purgatory and experiencing the 5 stages of grief. This theory is at least a decade old, possibly older, and many people still stand by it, believing it to be true to this day. However, when you really look at it, this theory has more holes than Link's Ocarina. Don't get me wrong, I do find it to be an interesting theory, but to me it's always been easily disprovable, and disproving it is what I'll be attempting to do today, using only official sources to back up my claims. Welcome to Silver Rooster, everyone, where today I'm going to explain the many reasons this theory just doesn't hold any water. Let's start with the Link traveling through purgatory part. For those who might not know, purgatory is kinda like the waiting room of the afterlife. This part of the theory is held up by 2 pillars. The first pillar is in the name of the land itself, Termina. I'm sure I don't have to spell it out for you, but Termina sounds a lot like terminal, as in finished, or the end. And look at how Link finds this land in the first place. By falling an unfathomable height down the inside of a tree. Some people say this fall underground was even the cause of his death. Well, I can confidently say this fall didn't kill Link since he landed safely on a large flower. Alright, look, I know that statement doesn't make any sense, but it's actually one of the game's mechanics that it doesn't matter how big of a fall it is, if you land on a Deku flower, you will take no damage. It even says in the Prima Collector's Guide for Majora's Mask, as luck would have it, Link lands safely on a large flower. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't describe an event that ended someone as it being safe. Alright, that bit's over. Back to the name Termina meaning terminal. That part of the theory actually is true, however, it's not the kind of terminal the theory in question claims it to be. Game director A.G. Alnuma was asked in a Nintendo Dream interview where the name came from, and he stated Termina is a terminal, as in a place where people gather to go somewhere else. Which makes sense given Clocktown's position in the center of everything in Termina, so in short, Termina doesn't mean the end, but a literal terminal. As for the second pillar that holds up the purgatory theory, it involves the fact that people we meet in Termina are identical to the ones we've met in Hyrule. If we go by the theory, this is because everyone we meet is just taking on the appearance of people in Link's memories while he's traveling through his purgatory. I should take this moment to mention the purgatory thing I've spent all this time talking about is new to me. When I first heard this theory over a decade ago, the theory was that the story of Majora's Mask was actually taking place in Link's subconscious, and that everyone looked like someone from Hyrule because the unconscious mind can't create a face it hasn't seen before. However, it seems the purgatory thing has become the popular version of the theory. In the end, though, whichever we choose to go with, I can disprove it with the same answer. Termina is neither purgatory or a world created by a dying Link's unconscious mind, but rather a parallel world to Hyrule. I mean, just look at how Link ends up in Termina. Before entering the clock tower, he runs down a winding path that twists 90 degrees. In the original game guide for Majora's Mask, there's text that reads, "In your new form, you'll be able to use Deku flowers to launch yourself into the air. Use that power to traverse the chasm in the mesa-peppered," I won't lie, I don't know what that word means, "cave that serves as a portal connecting the world of Hyrule with the parallel world of Clocktown." And there's our answer. Link is traveling to another world through a portal in the Lost Woods. Termina being a parallel world is also confirmed in 2011's Hyrule Historia, which also has text stating, "A strange parallel world where many of the inhabitants look identical to the people of Hyrule." So, since Termina is a parallel world to Hyrule, it makes sense that all the people look the same. It's because they are Termina's counterparts to the people of Hyrule. This is confirmed in many other sources as well. They've consistently stuck with the parallel world idea. And it's not like Link meeting another world's counterparts is something that's never been done before or since. Just look at the Dark World or Lorule. Heck, I can even point to the world of the Ocean King or the Twilight Realm. The Zelda universe has more parallel worlds than it does timelines. This makes it unlikely that the citizens of Termina are just memories of Link. We can also point to the fact that there are characters we meet in Termina that Link has never seen in Hyrule. so they can't be a part of his memories. With that, we're ready to move on to the next part of the grief theory. This is what I consider the biggest piece of evidence in favor of this theory, and that's the idea that Majora's Mask perfectly follows the Kubler-Ross model of grief. For those unfamiliar with it, this states that when someone is confronted with death, they go through 5 phases: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And those phases are present to us in each area Link visits. The citizens of Clocktown are in denial of their impending doom as it literally hangs over their heads in the form of the moon falling from the sky. Woodfall's Deku King is consumed by anger and is lashing out over the disappearance of his daughter. Snowhead's Darmani tries bargaining with Link to bring him back to life. Great Bay's Lulu is depressed after her eggs were stolen by pirates. And lastly, there's Akana Canyon, a land of the dead and, more importantly, acceptance, as Link meets many spirits and undead who he helps come to terms with their own deaths and deeds in life. This was brought up to series director Eiji Aonuma back in 2015, and he answered, "It's certainly true that each area of these different episodes you talked about has a different emotional cast to it. One feels like it's tinged with sadness, and another with anger. That certainly was intentional, but I also want to point out that it's not that each one of these episodes only has the one emotion that they are conveying. There are certainly other notes that we're trying to hit as well. And the reason we did this is always to allow the player to experience that emotion, to give them a chance to hook into the emotional tone of this scene, and react to it and feel like they want to accomplish something in the game as a result." Based on Aonuma's answer, it seems that the emotions of grief aren't the only emotions intended for players to focus on in each area, making it so that the 5 phases of grief part is really neither true or false, as those 5 phases are definitely present in those areas. However, one last thing I would like to point out is the bargaining phase with Darmani. People like to look at this as an example of bargaining, but I just don't think that fits, since it's less of him bargaining and more of him begging. And I just feel like those are 2 completely different things. But it's not really a big enough piece of evidence to really disprove anything, and I really can't pick apart the other phases from the rest of the areas anyway, so let's go ahead and move on. The next thing we need to look at are the 3 transformation masks, and a little ditty known as the Elegy of Emptiness. As I'm sure all of you know, the masks that allow Link to transform into a different race represent a character who's died, and whose spirit resides in the mask, allowing Link to take the form of the spirit inside. And the Elegy of Emptiness is a song Link acquires late into the game that allows you to create a statue of Link's current form. These statues are essentially funeral effigies. From a gameplay standpoint, it's just meant to be used as a means to hold down switches for you. But what the grief theory points out is that if the song creates a statue of these dead people, and Link is able to make a statue of himself, wouldn't that mean he too is dead? Well, no, it actually proves he's alive due to one small detail. If we look closely at the eyes of the statues for the transformation masks, none of them have pupils. Now granted, no Dekus have pupils, but Zoras and Gorons usually do. And these statues left behind by the Elegy of Emptiness all have lifeless eyes. But if we look at the statue Link leaves behind, in his own form, it still has pupils. I believe this shows Link is still alive, as the Elegy of Emptiness is described as a mystical song that allows you to shed a shell shaped in your current image. One other point of interest I should bring up is with Pamela's father. I legitimately could not find out what his actual name is. Pamela's father is a scientist who specializes in researching supernatural phenomena, and he has some interesting responses to each of Link's transformations. When you speak to him wearing any of the masks, he'll state, "My ghost radar is reacting fiercely. You seem to be both similar to a ghost and different from one at the same time." And if you speak to him without wearing any mask, he'll only be interested in Link's fairy tattle, and doesn't mention his ghost radar at all. One final thing I'd like to bring up is Link's encounter with the ghost Sharp. Sharp is an obstacle Link had to overcome in order to continue his journey. When you face Sharp, he says, "This is no place for one as full of life as you," and attacks Link by playing a cursed song that drains the life from all who listen to it, stating that Link will join the ranks of the dead. And sure enough, when Sharp starts playing the song, Link will begin to take damage. So Link must be alive if a song that drains life is able to hurt him. With that, I think it's time we move on to the last piece of evidence this theory uses to say that Link is dead. In the beginning of Majora's Mask, Link is traveling through the Lost Woods in search of Navi, whom he parted ways with at the ending of Ocarina. In Ocarina, we're told that people who get lost in the Lost Woods will eventually become a well-known Zelda monster, the Stalfos. And in Twilight Princess, we meet the hero Shade, a Stalfos-looking creature who is confirmed through many sources to be the hero of time, aka the Link of Majora's Mask in Ocarina. So, if the hero Shade is a Stalfos, and Link is shown in the Lost Woods in Majora's Mask, and Twilight Princess happens centuries after the events of Majora's Mask, wouldn't this confirm that Link died in the Lost Woods and became a Stalfos? Well, not quite, as this statement of people getting lost in the woods becoming Stalfos would somewhat get retconned to being adults who get lost become Stalfos, and children who get lost become Skull Kids, as stated in Hyrule Historia. Thus meaning, if the hero Shade is a Stalfos, Link can't be dead in Majora's Mask since he's a kid in that game. So if he had died in it, he would have become a Skull Kid instead. I'll admit relying on a retcon doesn't really provide strong evidence, so we'll have to take it a step further by pointing out that the hero Shade isn't even a Stalfos. Stalfos have had many different appearances throughout the series, but they all have one major similarity between them. They are all skeletal warriors, and if we look closely at the hero Shade, we can see that he's not actually a skeleton, as he does have ghostly flesh. Stalfos are also present in Twilight Princess, and they as an enemy don't have ghostly flesh like the hero Shade does. Another thing that needs to be said is that Twilight Princess's Link is a blood descendant of the Hero of Time. That's not speculation on my part, that's just a fact that I briefly talked about in my timeline video, which you should give a watch after this one. So we know that the Hero of Time lived long enough to father children who carry on his bloodline, which must have happened after Majora's Mask, considering Link is still a child in that game. So no matter how I look at it, I can't say the hero Shade's existence holds any proof of Link being dead, specifically in Majora's Mask. There is of course more evidence than what I've talked about in favor of the grief theory, but what I've broken down throughout this video was the evidence that I felt was the strongest. That being said, while writing this script, I stumbled upon another theory that I think holds more weight and I'd like to share with you. Now, I'm not sure where this theory originates from, but the idea is that Link's journey in Termina and experiencing the 5 phases of grief wasn't about accepting his own death, but rather the death of his friend Navi. This theory states that when fairies fulfill their purpose, they die. I don't know where that statement comes from, I don't think it's actually something ever stated in any game, and it's probably just speculation for this theory. But the idea is, Navi's purpose was to guide Link through his journey in saving the world from the threat of Ganondorf Dragmire, full government name. And so, at the end of Ocarina of Time, with the hero successfully fulfilling the prophecy and saving Hyrule, thus Navi fulfilling her purpose in guiding him, Navi left Link so he wouldn't see her die. Definitely a tragic theory, made worse by this page I found in Hyrule Historia, stating that Link had been looking for Navi over a period of months before the events of Majora's Mask. And as Link finishes his journey through Termina, he learns to accept the death of his dear friend Navi, as we once again see him traveling through the Lost Woods at the end of Majora's Mask, where according to Hyrule Historia, his whereabouts from this point are unknown, as history seems to have lost track of the deeds the Hero of Time went through from this point forward. Well everyone, we've reached the end, so I'd like to take a moment to say something I probably should have put at the beginning of the video. This wasn't an attack against anyone who chooses to believe in the grief theory at all. Just because I don't believe in it, doesn't mean you don't have to believe in it, especially if it makes Majora's Mask a more compelling story to you. I simply wanted to provide another perspective to it, and would love to hear what your theories and beliefs towards Majora's Mask are. After all, as I stated in my timeline video, the series is left ambiguous by design, as Nintendo wants players to fill the gaps themselves. So again, please feel free to share your own theories in the comments below. And with that, all I have left to say is, love you, mean it, Click. Looks like we've reached another end card, everyone. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe for me. If I've kept your attention this long, I'd say I've earned it. Plus, your one subscription holds more power than you think it does, and that like will give me a nice algorithm boost. You also get the added benefit of knowing whenever I release a video. I didn't intend to release 2 Zelda videos in a row, but I got inspired to make this one after I was reminded that the grief theory was a thing. My next video is gonna be Fire Emblem related though, and that is planned to be released in December, as I am trying to get at least 1 to 2 of these types of essay videos out a month. This one was supposed to be released on Halloween, but as you can see, things did not line up that way. Oh well, what can you do? With that, you guys all enjoy the rest of your night, day, evening, wherever you are right now. Bye-bye!